In this video, we are going to try to understand the super function in Python. When I just started learning object-oriented programming in Python, I was introduced to classes, object, inheritance and all, but the super function was always confusing until I actually started implementing in projects. So in this video, I will try to give you a few examples that actually made me understand the super function. So if you're just starting with object-oriented programming or trying to understand the super function better, this video might just be for you. Let's start by creating a class. So let's call it class 1. Say the class 1, we are going to define a constructor and I will pass in self. Inside this, I'm just going to print inside class 1 constructor. Okay. And then we are also going to define a function called output. Then I will pass in the self. And here we are going to print class 1 output. Okay. Now let's go on and create an object called C1 object, which will call the class 1. Now when I run this, we can see that the object is created using the class 1, and when it is calling the class 1, it will check whether there is a constructor inside or not. So here there is a constructor and it goes inside the constructor, and inside the constructor there is a print statement saying inside class 1 constructor, so we are getting that printed. But if we did not have this print statement, that if we had a pass, then we won't get anything printed. So how do we call this function? We just have to put output and then run it. So it is checking whether there is a constructor or not. Yes, there is a constructor. It is calling the constructor. There is a pass. Then we are calling the function inside the class 1. So that print statement is printed. But what if we didn't have the constructor? Still, it will work because we are calling this. If we cut this out, then nothing will be printed. So that is pretty much how the class, the function, and the constructor works. Now let's just define the constructor back. Okay, now that it is working, we can go on and create another class called class 2 and put in similar parameters. I have defined the class 2. Now let's create an object for the class 2. Now when I run this, you can see first the class 1 constructor is called and then the print statement is printed. Then it is calling the output function within class 1, that is also printed. Then coming to class 2, we are calling the constructor of the class 2, that is printed, and then the output statement is also printed. To make it slightly better, we will print like this. Okay, now let's see about the super function here. Now, if I want to inherit class 1 inside class 2, which means class 1 will be parent of class 2. So class 2 will be the child, class 1 will be the parent. So how to do that? I'll just pass in class 1 as the parent inside class 2. So it is inheriting here. And if I want to just call it, what I will do is I will define super, then I will do init. And now if I run, you see what is happening. So first we are calling class 1 and its output. So it is checking whether there is a constructor. Yes, there is a constructor. And it is then running the output function. Yes, the output function is also run. Then it comes to this print and then there is a gap. Going to class 2, first it is checking whether there is a constructor. Yes, there is a constructor. So go inside that. And inside the constructor, there is super. Okay, so now super will call the parent's constructor. So we are calling the parent's constructor. Super will just give you access to any function within class 1 because that is a parent. So even if you want to call other functions within this class, you can do it. So let's call the constructor of class 1. So it is calling this constructor, and within the constructor, we have the print statement inside class 1 constructor. So that is getting printed here. Okay, then after that it is exiting the super statement, this statement, and then coming to this print statement. So it is printing inside class 2 constructor. That is pretty straightforward, right? And then we have the output statement because we are calling the output function, and hence we are getting this class 2 output. But instead of calling the init, what if we called the output. What is going to happen? You can see from the super, which is technically the class 1, instead of typing in class 1 we are typing in super. That is the only difference. We are calling the output function just like what we are doing here, but inside this we'll be calling it as super.output. So it is calling super.output, and when this statement is run, first the output statement of super is run, which is the output statement of class 1, and then coming to this statement it is running the inside class 2 constructor line, and then coming out we are calling the output function. So this is getting printed. That is also again pretty straightforward, easy to understand. Now if this constructor did not exist, what is going to happen? Then we are just passing in class 1. So when the class 2 is called, it is checking whether there is a constructor inside class 2 or not. No, there is no constructor. So it will go to the parent class and check whether there is a constructor. Yes, here there is a constructor. So it is running this statement. Okay. So we are getting inside class 1 constructor. After calling class 2, we are inside class 1 constructor because it is inheriting there. Okay, then it is exiting out of that, and then coming to the output statement, we are getting the class 2 output printing here. Okay, but what if this also didn't exist? Then it is just like we are calling the class 1 dot output. Okay, this function is called, it's printing. Then we are calling class 2 dot output, and this is printing. There is no point in having this here at all, right? So now we will uncomment this as well. Sorry, this too. Okay, now we have everything that we wanted. Okay, so this is not needed anymore. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another class for class 3. Now let's make this a class 3 object. Now if you notice inside class 3, I'm just calling class 1 and I'm going to run this. Let's see what happens. Okay. When I call class 3, what is happening is first it is going inside the constructor, and inside the constructor we have the super.output. So it is checking for super.output. Yes, we have class 1.output and it is printing that, which is class 1 output. Yes, sure. And then we have the print statement, class 3 constructor. Yes, it is printing. Then coming to the output function of class 3, it is printing. Okay, now what if I change this to init, which is the constructor of class 1? Then it is going to say inside class 1 constructor. So this is going to work regardless of how many functions you have. When you call super to the from the class 3, it is going to check what is the parent, and it is going to call that parent function, and whatever function you are calling inside the parent, sorry, it will call the parent class, and whatever function you are calling within the parent class will get run. Okay, now what if I want to call two classes and inherit two classes? Now when I run, just predict what is going to happen, keep it in your mind and see whether it is the same or not. We are just calling two classes and we have one super. So which one is going to be the parent? When I run, you can see that it is giving an error. So what exactly is happening here? When I call class 1, it is calling this class. Okay, but we also have another parameter. So what is this going to do? It is like this will get into the input of this. So essentially when we call like this, it means class 2 is the parent of class 1 and class 1 is the parent of class 3. But class 1 being the child of class 2 is not calling class 2, right? So to make this much clear, if it is confusing, I will just swap these two, and when I run it, it will be much clear. So instead of this, I'm just going to call it init, so it will be easy to understand. So you focus here what is happening. When we call the class 3, actually we will just take this out of equation. When we call class 3, it is checking whether there is a constructor or not. Yes, there is a constructor. It is going inside the constructor. So this super is going to be the first parameter. So in this case, it is class 2. The first class will be the super. It will be the parent. So class 2 is the parent of class 3. Okay, sure. Now it is calling the init of class 2. Let's go to the constructor of class 2. So when we call the constructor of class 2, it is having a parent, right? Even if you don't pass it here, it's still going to work because we are passing it here. So this essentially is going to go inside this as the parent. So class 1 is the parent of class 2. So when we call super from class 2, it is going to call the class 1's constructor, which is that because that is the function. So it is going to the function of class 1, the init function, the constructor. So first this statement is run. That's why we are getting inside class 1 constructor. Okay. Once this is done, it is going to exit and come to the next statement because this is done. So it is saying print inside class 2 constructor. That is also done. Once this function is done, it is again going to the next statement, which is print inside class 3 constructor. So that is what we have got. Okay, now let's call the output also here. Okay, now we get class 1 constructor, then class 2 constructor, then the class 3 constructor, then we get the class 2 output. That is just like what we had expected. Now let's say I want to make class 2 as the parent of class 1. So what exactly should I do? I'll just make a small modification. I'll pass in class 2 as the parent of class 1. So what is going to change? This super should not exist here. Instead, it should exist here. So when I call like this, first class 2 is called because that is the parent of everything. So class 1 is parent of class 3 and class 2 is parent of class 1. So first class 2 will appear, then the class 1 and then the class 3. Then our output function. So this is the example that made me understand super function better. I hope it was clear for you as well. If you have any doubts or questions or comments, you please drop it in the comment section. If you like this video, consider subscribing to the channel and dropping a like. It could help me. Thank you. See you in another video.